Will when you're in the school. That's the right thing to do.
All right, folks, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. Because I know that our guest Debbie has a lot to cover for us today. I want to say thank you to Keller for introducing us. Part of our jobs as real estate agents is we're helping guide people through pretty major transitions. Sometimes it's exciting stuff like marriage. Sometimes it's sad things that are happening like divorce. And today what Debbie from Dementia Friends of PA is going to talk about is how you can better understand what families are going through when they have affected by dementia. As you can imagine, that's a pretty significant life change as well that they're going through. So this is going to allow us to have some extra resources in our belt and more empathy for things that are going on. Dessert is in the back. So after this class, then lunch is coming in. My grandma always used to say that life is too short. Let's order dessert first. What typically would happen is we would order pie and then we would be too full for lunch. So save some room because we do have a fun lunch coming in next. Yeah, thank you all for being here today. I think this is much needed and we're really grateful for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. First of all, I have to say, I appreciate Brittany calling me Debbie because the only person in my entire life that called me Debbie was my mom. And every time somebody unexpectedly calls me Debbie, I always think that's my mom kind of wants to know what I'm saying. I'm right there with her. So I'm really excited to be here today. I'm grateful for Brittany and I'm grateful for Taylor for kind of coordinating this. As Brittany said, I'm a champion with Dementia Friends of Pennsylvania. So that's kind of my side hustle. I enjoy going out to the community, educating people about dementia. Because that's super important that people have an awareness of what it might be like for somebody living with dementia, how can we support them, and that's the exact initiative of Dementia Friends of Pennsylvania. So my full-time job, I work at Arden Courts of Susquehanna, which is a dedicated memory care community in Harrisburg. I'm the memory care advisor there and a certified dementia practitioner. Probably about 2+ years ago, I was introduced to Dementia Friends of Pennsylvania, and I thought this is a great way to bring awareness to the community. So Dementia Friends of Pennsylvania is actually a global initiative that was started in the United Kingdom. So many states throughout Pennsylvania have a Dementia Friends chapter. We're fortunate that Pennsylvania is one of them, but we are working towards having all of the states have a Dementia Friends chapter. Right now, as of this morning, this is like live numbers right now. We have 22,755 dementia friends in Pennsylvania, meaning they, like you, are about to go through or went through a presentation for Dementia Friends. Being a champion with Dementia Friends, I have the added benefit of being able to go out and make more friends. So once you become a champion, you have the ability to go out and make dementia friends. And speaking from, the human perspective, again, super important to connect with people, educate them on the disease progression, support them the best way that we can, but also from a business perspective. It's so incredible that the folks here at Keller Williams will be able to say, hey, we're dementia friends here. We took that extra step because we recognize that we don't live in a bubble. We are out in the community and many folks are living with dementia. So I think some numbers are really important to go over. Like 1 in 3 people will develop dementia throughout the course of their lifetime. So that's a pretty staggering statistic when you think about it. I was having dinner with my husband and my daughter a couple weeks ago. And we were talking about dementia, as I often do. And I mentioned that, and my daughter kind of looked around and she's like, there's 3 of us here. And I said, yeah, I know, there's 3 of us here. The chances that one of us will develop dementia throughout the course of our life is pretty high. I think another statistic that is very sobering is that 70% of Americans who are living with dementia are living alone. They are living by themselves. So I think it's super important that you're here today, and we're gonna find out a little bit more about dementia together. So first of all, I'd like to just ask, anybody in here love somebody that's living with dementia? That's quite a few of you. I'm so glad that you're here today. So we'll just start by saying that. Again, we talked about Dementia Friends being a global initiative. So we have our workbook we're gonna go through together, but we're gonna talk about a lot of things as well. So what are some things, when somebody says dementia, what are some words that come to mind? Feel free to shout them out.
Forgetful.
Forgetful,
Lost.
lost,
Confused.
confused,
Unable to recognize.
unable to recognize, yeah, sad, yeah, yeah. So if we think about all of those phrases that we just said, they all have a pretty negative feel to them. And the big initiative with Dementia Friends Pennsylvania is that we want to change the way people think about dementia. We want to change the way people talk about dementia. So some of the things that we're super sensitive to, and I find myself being super sensitive to this, is, you know, when somebody says, we want to eliminate phrases like higher functioning. Because what does that say about somebody who might be in the later stages of the disease process? Could you imagine if somebody said to you, your loved one is lower functioning? You would feel terrible hearing that. So we changed some of the language that we use. Instead of saying higher functioning, we say in the early stages of dementia progression or in the later stages of disease progression. Using words like demented, senile. Those are language, words that we're trying to get away from because they have that negative image associated with them. So we're going to talk about dementia in and of itself there are many, many different types of dementia. So there's well over 100 different types of dementia. Some are very rare, some are more common. A very rare form of dementia is mad cow disease. If you've ever heard of mad cow disease, it's actually a form of dementia called Creutzfeldt-Jakob. And then there's the one that most people often think of when they hear dementia, which is Alzheimer's. So a lot of times people get that confused. You know, what's dementia, what's Alzheimer's? Well, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So dementia is that big umbrella term, just like if you were to say cancer. There's many different types of cancer, many different types of dementia. Everybody that is living with dementia, based on their diagnosis, will have a different type of progression. It may be more rapid. There may be things that we see as a part of that disease progression based directly on the type of dementia somebody has. So it's important to recognize that many different types of dementia. So dementia is that big umbrella term. Alzheimer's is typically the most common form of dementia that we see. I would say mixed dementia is right up at the top because mixed dementia means I'm living with more than one type of dementia, which is very common. So it's very common that I might have a vascular dementia, but I might also later develop Alzheimer's. So it's very common for people to have more than one type of dementia. In a community setting such as ours, we would see everything from Alzheimer's to vascular dementia to Parkinson's disease dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia. Those are all types of dementia that we care for. So when we're talking about creating a dementia-friendly community, we really want to increase people's awareness about what it might be like for somebody living with dementia. So we want to talk about that. We want people to recognize when you're out in the community doing your daily tasks, you know, that you have to get done, or maybe in your, you know, in the business world as you're working with families, you're going to come across people living with dementia. So I think it helps to increase the awareness, have an understanding of what somebody living with dementia might be experiencing and how we can best support them. So we're really working towards creating dementia-friendly communities. So there are some counties that have dementia-friendly county status. So a goal of mine is to make Dauphin County one of those counties that, because that's where I'm based in Dauphin County, to make Dauphin County a dementia-friendly county. So, and we do that with the help of all types of community partners, all types of businesses, libraries. I've done presentations, you know, for Area Agency on Aging, Elder Abuse Task Force, pharmacists, teachers. So we are really banding together to increase awareness. So we're going to talk a little bit about, on page 4, we're going to talk about the differences between aging and Alzheimer's disease. That I think is really interesting to try to put in perspective is that sometimes people who are living with dementia do not recognize that, or do not acknowledge, they may recognize it, but they may not acknowledge that they are living with dementia. So can you imagine trying to support somebody who has a concern that they do not even acknowledge or, you know, want to participate in you helping them with? So that makes it very difficult, but we're going to talk about aging, what's normal, what's not normal. So at the age of 40, and I'm not going to make anybody raise your hands to specify that, but at the age of 40, we all begin a process called normal cognitive decline. That happens to every single one of us. Some people will go through normal cognitive decline and might progress to mild cognitive impairment. Does not necessarily mean that somebody that has mild cognitive impairment will go on to have dementia. It just really, you know, it's not a guarantee. Not everybody that ages is going to have dementia. So what's normal with aging? Sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. I'm sure none of you ever do that. I'm sure you all have your appointments straight. You know everybody's names, but that's pretty common for us to forget something and it comes back to you later. So you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to go to the dentist yesterday. I forgot I had that appointment at 2 o'clock. I forgot I wanted to pay the Verizon bill, but it comes back to you later. With dementia, that's not happening. It's not coming back to you later. We're talking about memory loss that is disrupting your ability to navigate your daily activities. Normal part of aging, making occasional errors when balancing a checkbook. Anybody still use the checkbook register in here? A couple people, yeah. See, it's making a comeback, I feel like. But, you know, that's normal. Now, some of you may be really anal retentive that when you realize that your bank statement is off by 6 cents, you're going to find it. You're going to go through there and find that. With dementia, again, that's not happening. We're really developing problems with planning or doing any complex tasks like that. Our executive or decision-making skills are really compromised with dementia. So that's a bit different. Needing occasional help to use the settings on a microwave or record a TV show. It happens to me, not the microwave, but, and who's really recording a TV show anymore? But if it's something you don't do all the time, and it's a task that has multi-steps, it's pretty common for you, if you don't do it all the time, to forget 1 or 2 of those steps. And that's normal. You know, you might have to think about it, you might have to take a picture of the instructions with your phone, and next time you'll refer back to it. But with dementia, we are not learning anything new. Once somebody's hippocampus is compromised, we are not learning any new information. That is not happening. So when I hear a family say that they're really struggling at home because we turned the stove off, so mom wouldn't cook on the stove anymore because we recognized that was dangerous. We got her a microwave and I've shown her how to use it 500 times. You could show her 5,000 times. She is not going to learn how to operate that microwave. It is impossible now for me to learn new things. I am not storing information in my brain any longer. So that becomes a problem. Sometimes the disease, begins to outpace the environment. Sometimes that's what happens. Things will work until they don't work. So we're not learning anything new at that point. Normal part of aging, confused about the day of the week, but recalling it later. Usually happens to me on Thursday when I think it's Friday, and then I'm super disappointed, but that is normal. We've all gotten confused, like, oh my gosh, no, today is Thursday. But confusion with time or place, again, when we were talking about things that come to mind with dementia, people being confused. We are losing the flow of time. That is what's happening with dementia. I might be oriented to myself, but I may not be oriented to place or time. So things like what day of the week, what month it is, what season it is, what year it is, that becomes lost to me. Again, time of day also becomes lost to me. So that's not normal. Vision changes related to cataracts. That's normal. That's a normal part of aging. What's not normal, and sometimes we'll see this happen where families will describe that, you know, hey, I got dad a new pair of glasses and he's still having the same problems. He's still tripping on the stairs. He's still falling over the curb. It's because at some point when the occipital lobe is affected by dementia, glasses will not work any longer. Glasses only fix the external problem. They're not going to fix the problem inside the brain, which is now I can't interpret the information that I'm receiving. So things that typically look three-dimensional to us, like especially if stairs are the same color as the floor, my brain interprets that as 3 dimensions. With dementia, sometimes that no longer happens. It's not 3-dimensional any longer, so it looks like it's all one level. So it's very easy for me to trip on stairs. Very easy for me to trip on a sidewalk that might be similar color to the road. I might not notice that sidewalk. So I think we've all probably heard of, you know, friends, families that's happened to where, gosh, you know, dad took a really bad spill outside the grocery store. You know, he didn't see that step up and he fell. Same thing with a dark colored rug on a light colored floor. You might see people try to avoid stepping on that because that could be a hole in the ground. My brain can't interpret that that's a rug on top of the surface of the floor any longer. Same thing actually happens with hearing as well. So at some point, hearing aids don't work anymore. Cochlear implants don't work anymore because at some point the brain will fail to take the information it's receiving and use it properly. So sometimes that will happen as well. Sometimes having trouble finding the right word. That's probably happened to all of us where you're thinking of something, you know what the word is, it's right there, you just can't pull it out. That's normal, because usually a couple hours later when nobody's around for you to feel validated, that word's gonna pop right out and you're gonna know, it's like, oh my gosh, that was what I was talking about. But new problems with words in speaking or writing is something that we should be concerned about. So if we're suddenly, you know, having conversations with our loved one and we're recognizing that, wow, there's a lot of long pauses. They're really struggling to find the right word. Or maybe they're plugging in a word that doesn't quite make sense. Sometimes it's referred to as word finding, where somebody's trying to find a word. Sometimes they will substitute a different word. So instead of saying watch, they might say, where's my hand clock? Because the word watch is no longer coming to them. So they might substitute something in there that makes sense. Sometimes people experience something called schizophasia, where they will invent words that are not part of our language. And they will put those words in and they'll mix them in with some regular words and they'll kind of invent their own language of that. It's called, sometimes it's referred to as word salad, but the actual name for it is schizophasia. Let's see, sometimes, find the right word, misplacing things from time to time and retracing steps to find them. That's a normal part of aging. So every day when I get home, I pretty much have the same routine. I come in the house, I let the dog out. A little while later, probably looking for my phone. And if I think about it, I realize, okay, when I got home, I went to the kitchen, let the dog out. My phone is on the kitchen counter by the back door. With dementia, that's not happening. So I'll give you a perfect example of how this goes down if I'm living with dementia. I decide that, you know, maybe I have some guests coming over, I want to put my purse away. So I decide I'm going to put my purse in the top drawer of my dresser, and a little while later, I'm looking for my purse. My brain will no longer retrace steps. I am not going to make the connection that a while ago, I decided I was going to put my purse in my drawer. So you're here now, and what did you do with my purse? Why are you always taking my things? I am so mad at you. That happens all the time. We hear spouses and family members say, my gosh, every day they're putting stuff away, and then later they're accusing me of taking it. That's because my brain will no longer retrace those steps and allow me to recognize that it was I who put my purse away. Making a bad decision once in a while. So we all had that person that we dated that we probably shouldn't have. Or we all had that, you know, hairstyle that we thought was gonna look good, didn't quite work out. That's normal. You know, we mature, we look at things differently as we grow through life. So it's normal to make a bad decision once in a while. With dementia, we are seeing decreased or poor judgment. So I'll give you an example of this. So typically, frontal temporal dementia is the most common dementia diagnosed under the age of 60. It affects the frontal and the temporal lobes. And the frontal and the temporal lobes have our good decision-making skills in them. So when that is affected, somebody with FTD doesn't typically present with short-term memory loss initially in the earlier stages of the disease process. So a lot of times families don't immediately think dementia because this is somebody they know, and all of a sudden this person is making really strange decisions because they have lost the ability to kind of use their good decision-making skills and those executive decision-making skills. So we had a gentleman who, you know, 51 years old, he was a bachelor, didn't cook for himself. Every night of the week, he went to a different restaurant. So one evening, he was going to Papa John's because it was Thursday, that's Papa John's day, going there to pick up my order. As I'm going there, I blow through a stop sign, police are nearby, they pursue. Did I pull over? No. I had to get to Papa John's. My order's waiting for me. That gentleman continued to speed up. He lost control of his car. He did not hurt himself. He did not hurt anyone else, but there was property damage involved. And what do you think happened? Yeah, got arrested. He ended up in Dauphin County Prison until his family found out that, hey, you know, he has dementia. But that's not the first thing that, you know, a responding officer might think of when they see, you know, a young man making a very poor decision. Sometimes feeling weary of work and family social obligations. Nothing feels better than canceled plans. When you did not want to go out. You know, you're thinking about that dinner that 2 weeks ago sounded pretty good. And all of a sudden your friend calls you and says, you know what, I have a terrible headache. I'm not going to be able to go to dinner tonight. And you're like, oh my gosh, sweetie, that's terrible. You know, we'll reschedule. But in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, thank God, I did not want to go out. That is normal. Withdrawal from work or social activities is not normal. So if we have, let's say, a family member who used to come to church every Sunday, I would pick them up and we'd go to church, then we'd go out for lunch. And all of a sudden they have a lot of reasons why they can't do that. Every week it's something new. Oh, I don't really feel well today. I don't think I can go. Or, you know, we see people that begin to withdraw from groups that they were involved in, you know, committees that they're on, things that were really important to them, they are now disengaging from. And a lot of times that happens as a self-preservation mechanism. So when I'm at about stage 5 of disease progression, which is a really difficult stage, I mean, I call that all dressed up and ready to go, because these are the people that if you don't know me really well and you have a short social interaction with me, I can hold my own in a short conversation, because the social cues that we learn from such a young age that they are stored very deep inside of us. So we're taught how to say, please, thank you, hello. So if somebody comes up to me and I'm stage 5 dementia and they say, how are you doing today, Deb? Well, I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, it's really nice out today. Oh boy, it sure is. I can do that in a short conversation. But once we get beyond 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we start to see the train leave the tracks. We're gonna identify repetitive conversation, conversational loops, short-term memory deficits. So a lot of times when people at stage 5 recognize the deficit, they recognize it, but they can't have a meaningful conversation with you about it. They can't sit down and say, Brittany, I'm really worried about myself. You know, I've been forgetting some things and I'm really scared. I can't do that, but I can protect myself. So if I recognize that, oh gosh, if I go out to that lunch, somebody might say, you already told me that story. Or why are you doing it that way? That doesn't make any sense. So I will remove myself from certain situations. So that is not normal. We'll start to see people withdrawal in that way. Developing very specific ways of doing things and becoming irritable when a routine is disrupted. That is normal. I'm sure I won't use any couples in here as an example, but I'm sure that one of you thinks nobody can make that bed the way you do. And you might go in there and fix it again. That's normal. Sometimes that's just a part of our personalities. You know, we take charge of certain situations and we're gonna do it our way. But changes in mood and personality that are uncharacteristic of that person, that is not normal. So when something disrupts my day and I'm living with dementia, you may see a complete and total meltdown because of that. I won't be able to recover. You know, the person not living with dementia is able to kind of recover. We might not like it, you know, we might have to change and do something else that we weren't prepared to do, but we pivot and we recover. Somebody living with dementia is no longer doing that. If my day is disrupted, my schedule's disrupted, that may just put me into a tailspin for the entire day. I won't be able to recover from that. All right, moving on. So this is one of my favorite analogies is the bookcase story. So a lot of times when we think about dementia progression, and how that progression happens, a good analogy is the bookcase story. So all of our memories we have ever created from birth, even the ones that we can't actively recall, are stored in our brain. So if we think about that like the bookcases, or like the books on a bookcase, all of those represent our memories. So in this scenario, this is a 70-year-old person living with dementia and has a full bookcase beside them. And each book represents a skill, a memory, something that they've acquired over their lifetime. On the top shelves are their facts, their decision-making abilities, their ability to navigate through complex tasks. That's all stored on the top of the bookshelf. My things that make me me and the things that make you you are stored on the bottom of the bookshelf. So things that are tied to my emotions, my feelings, things that I, learned from a very young age, those are stored closer to the bottom of the bookshelf. So when dementia comes along and starts rocking that bookshelf, the first books that are falling off are kind of what you learn last, you forget first. So my decision-making skills, my ability to navigate my day successfully, my short-term memories, those are all coming off the shelf. But emotions are still very much a part of who I am. So this is one example that I always like to use. So let's say that I'm gonna use you, John. Let's say I am your long-lost college friend. Reunions happening, you come into town, you come up, you knock on my door, you think, hey, maybe we'll go out, we'll get a drink before the reunion, it'll be nice to catch up. I open the door and you say, Deb, so good to see you. I can't believe we're getting together for this. This is gonna be so much fun. And I just kind of stand there and say, I'm sorry, do I know you? And you're like, Deb, it's me, John. You know, we went to college together. You know, we used to hang out after class. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. Oh, come on, Deb. You're still mad at me because I talked you out of dating that one guy that you like. Still holding that grudge. You know what? You always were high maintenance. I don't have time for this. So he leaves. I close the door, and the good news is, in 10 minutes, I'm not gonna remember that John came to the door. That will be gone. But the feeling that was created from him kind of yelling at me, that's gonna remain with me. Because if you think about it, anytime in your life you have gotten bad news, it is also a physical reaction. You know, somebody tells you bad news, your heart rate increases, my respiration rate increases, adrenaline's pumping through me. So even though I've forgotten it, my body's still reacting to it. So if we flip that scenario, and let's say we jump ahead in the future and John already took this Dementia Friends class, and he comes to my door and he knocks on it, says, Deb, great to see you. Same scenario. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. And then John thinks about, you know what, I did hear something that maybe Deb was living with dementia. And I took that Dementia Friends presentation. Deb, it's me, John. We went to college together. You know, we used to have such fun in that one class that we had together. And we used to hang out at the pizza place afterwards. You know, and it's such a nice day today. And I know how much you like flowers. I thought, what if we walked down to the park and we just sit and talk for a while? Well, that sounds pretty good to me. You know, it is a nice day out. So we walk down there and we laugh, and John tells me stories, and we have a great time, and he walks me home, and then he leaves and I close the door. And the bad news is I'm not going to remember that. I'm not going to remember the walk to the park. I'm not going to remember the conversation we had. I'm not going to remember how much we laughed, but I'm going to feel good all day long. I'm not going to know why, but it's just going to be a good feeling. You know what? Today was a really good day. I may not remember why, but the most important thing is the emotional connection that we made with the person living with dementia, because that's what's going to remain. The memory might be lost, but the emotion will stay with them. So that's what's important. At the bottom there, it does show an image of a healthy brain versus advanced Alzheimer's. So does anybody know how much a healthy brain weighs?
8 pounds.
3 pounds. You got it. You're probably thinking of Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
You're gonna get 8 pounds. Yeah, that's right. A healthy brain weighs 3 pounds. At end stage of dementia progression, it will go from 3 pounds to 1 pound. So we're talking about 2 pounds of brain tissue loss. So that's reflecting that image on the right-hand side there. So we'll do a quick exercise. I promise this will be fun. Since we're a larger group, we're just gonna shout things out. I won't make you break into groups with people you probably don't like. So we'll just keep it moving this way. So we're gonna come up with an everyday task. You're gonna be assigned an everyday task that you need to accomplish. So your everyday task today is you need to go to the store and buy a dozen eggs. Now, I'm gonna give you a head start. You're already in the parking lot at the grocery store. What do you have to do next? Anybody can shout anything out.
Enter the store.
Enter the store, get out of the car.
Apply for a loan to buy it.
Apply for a loan, yes. Okay. Apply for the loan,
Head to the egg section,
head to the egg section,
grab the eggs.
grab the eggs.
Make sure they're not broken.
So
Yeah.
they're not broken. Very good, Brittany. Usually I have a room full of risk takers that never check the eggs. So
Not
that's important.
Go to the register.
Go to the register.
Hopefully you brought your purse or your wallet.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Then
Pay for your eggs.
pay for your eggs.
Your car.
Take out your eggs and take them.
Yeah. There you go. That's another good one. So if you think about it, that was probably maybe, how many steps did we think of? Maybe 10, 12 steps? There's a lot more steps involved to things that you and I really don't have to think about. So, when you're in the checkout line at the grocery store and you see somebody really struggling with how to use that debit card, or you see, God forbid, they pull out a checkbook, because then we're like, oh, wow, we're really in this now. All the things that you and I don't typically have to think about might pose a problem as this person tries to complete this task. Okay, they were at the store. Do they remember why they went to the store in the first place? They get to the store. Do they know where to look for eggs? When they get up to the register and they're going to pay, how are they gonna pay? Like Taylor said, did I bring my purse? Did I remember my wallet? If I'm paying with a debit card, do I know my PIN? Do I know how to use the machine? All of those things could pose, a challenge to somebody who's living with dementia. So it's important to kind of be patient with people. Sometimes we're not always the most patient people when we're out in the world, but, sometimes I think, and I'm probably the least patient person I know, but sometimes I think when I see somebody struggling with something, I think, what is this person doing? Then I have to take a step back and think, you know what, this might be somebody that's living with dementia. And maybe we just have to be more understanding, or maybe I could help in some way. Maybe you could say, what are you looking for? Can I help you find something? Maybe they're looking for their car then and they can't find it. Maybe they have a key fob. Well, maybe if we press your horn button, we might be able to locate your car. Hopefully they're not driving themselves home, if that's the case. But there's ways that we can kind of intervene and kind of be that supportive person as this person's out there. So communication is super important when we're living with people with dementia. So some of the tips that we always talk about with communication is, one, you always want to treat the person with dignity and respect. Just because I'm living with dementia does not mean that I am not living my life. I am very much living my life. So I'm always super aware that when I go out to maybe meet somebody who's living with dementia and their family members there, sometimes people have the tendency to talk about that person as if they are not sitting there. So you always want to make sure that you're not talking about the person, that you're communicating with them, you're including them in the conversation. One of the assessments that I did at a home, 3 lovely daughters, lovely woman, and all of the daughters really wanted to tell me about what was going on with mom, why mom was sitting there. And after a while, we looked over and she was just kind of sitting there like this. And she had a very sour look on her face, and her daughter said, Mom, what's wrong? And she said, well, I just think you're being all very rude right now, because she felt like she was kind of left out of the conversation. So we want to treat the person with dignity and respect. We want to avoid talking as if they're not there. We want to include them in the conversation if we can. Be aware of your feelings. Your tone of voice is going to communicate your attitude. So again, emotions very much connected to who I am. If I'm losing my decision-making skills, my formal language skills, my executive decision-making abilities, I'm really super connected to emotion. So if you approach me, you got to get me to that appointment. Come on now, what did you do with your shoes? Where are your shoes at? Let's go. Grab your jacket. We're going to be late. Let's go. Probably not going to be a very easy trip to get to the appointment. I'm probably going to feel very agitated and upset and maybe scared. So we want to convey a positive tone when we're addressing somebody, and be patient. Offer comfort and reassurance if they're having trouble communicating. Make sure that you encourage them. I know it's really hard when you're having a conversation with somebody and they kind of forget what they wanted to say, and we want to be helpful, so we start throwing stuff in there. We want to try to give that person time to think about what they want to say, because if I'm living with dementia, it will take me about 20 seconds to process something that you've asked me. So would you mind asking me how much patient was?
Wow, that's a long time.
Painful. That's painful. So you can see why people want to jump in and say, well, did you eat anywhere nice? Did you get any good pictures? So now what's gonna happen? Was taking me 20 seconds to process the first question. Now you're throwing in all these other questions. So we just have to really be patient and kind of slow it down, and avoid trying to always intercede. We want to give them the opportunity, because the most important thing is that I feel successful. So we want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to be successful. Avoid criticizing or correcting. You know, if somebody says something that's incorrect, you know, kind of like what we were talking about, the hand clock. If somebody says, I'm looking for my hand clock, we don't always need to say, do you mean your watch? Because we knew exactly what they meant. So sometimes it's not always necessary to correct somebody. Avoid arguing. So there's 3 types of people you can't argue with. That is teenagers, drunk people, and people living with dementia. For the exact reason that all of them are having, you know, if I'm a teenager, my frontal lobe is not fully developed. So give your teenagers some grace. You know, I don't develop my frontal lobe until I'm about 25. So there's a reason why you can't talk to me about anything. Same thing, alcohol impairs somebody's decision-making ability. You can't have a conversation with me. Somebody living with dementia, same thing. You're not going to win that argument. So I always say, save your energy for the battles that matter. If I come out of the bedroom with 2 shirts on, I'm wearing 2 shirts today. We don't need to have an argument about that. If I'm trying to go outside and start the car, we absolutely need to have a conversation about that. So we gotta save our energy for the things that really, really matter. A guess is not always necessary. Encourage nonverbal communication. So if you don't understand what somebody is trying to tell you, sometimes if they're, maybe you can kind of get the gist that they're looking for something, you can maybe say, can you point to it? Could you show me what you want? So sometimes that's helpful. Approaching somebody who's living with dementia and starting a conversation. So one of the things that's very important is to always come from the front. You never want to sneak up on somebody that's living with dementia, because that can be super startling to them. We don't want to do that. You want to come from the front, you want to come slowly, because remember, my occipital lobe might be affected. I might have some visual changes. So you want to approach me at a normal rate of speed. You don't want to kind of run up on me. You just want to walk up slowly. And if you can, if you're able to, get down at my level. You know, make sure that you're having a conversation with me eye to eye, because what happens as the brain degenerates, we think about that the damage happens on the outside of the brain and it's working its way in towards the brain stem. The closer I get to the brain stem, or the more degeneration I have of the brain, the more I will revert to fight or flight. So I can't process the fact that you're coming up to me really fast because you're excited to see me. If you're coming up to me really fast, my brain might perceive that as a threat. So when we hear people talk about behaviors are really just a normal response from a person whose brain can't process information the same way that a healthy brain can. Their response is completely normal based on the information that they're receiving. Call the person by their preferred name to get their attention. And the best way to do that, you know, hey, maybe there's some people out there that want to be called honey and sweetie and all of that, but the best way to find out how somebody wants to be addressed is to walk up to them and hold out your hand and say, I'm Deb, it's nice to meet you. Because even if I'm in the very later stages of disease progression, my sense of self will be the last thing that I lose. So even residents who are in stage 6 of the disease, approaching stage 7 of the disease, 9 times out of 10, they will put out their hand and they will tell you their name. And they might say, I'm Bob, or they might say, I'm Mr. Smith. And then you know exactly how they want to be addressed. Use short, simple phrases, repeat information, speak slowly and clearly, using that gentle and relaxed tone that we're all really good at. Patiently wait for a response, because again, it may take upwards of 20 seconds for me to process information. Sometimes providing a statement instead of asking a question is helpful. So a lot of times it might be easier to say, The bathroom's right here, instead of saying, do you need to use the bathroom? Because sometimes how that's interpreted by me is, do you need to use the bathroom? And that kind of makes me feel like I couldn't have, connected that myself. So sometimes just demonstrating to somebody, "Yep, the bathroom's right here." Then that may trigger that response from that person. Avoid confusing statements. So using, pronouns like it's over there. Probably not helpful for somebody with dementia. You probably need to be very specific if you want them to get their coat. Your coat is on the chair. And you might have to say, grab your coat, bring it over here. Let me help you put it on. Because complex, anything with a series of steps becomes too much information for me. So we might need to break that down. Turn negatives into positives. So instead of saying, don't do that, we might say, let's do this. Let's try this instead. Give visual cues. So a lot of times as dementia progression happens, there are still opportunities for me to be successful. What you do for me, you take from me. So we want to make sure we give opportunities for people to be successful. So I may not remember that I have to get my toothbrush and I have to open it, the toothpaste, and put that on. I might need some help with that, but I might be very capable of brushing my teeth. You might have to show me what you want me to do. You might have to use a hand over hand technique and demonstrate it. But more often than not, that muscle memory will kick in and I'll be able to complete the task that you're, trying to help me with. So we want to give opportunities for that. Avoid quizzing. That's really tough for people living with dementia. And I always understand the intention because, boy, if we could fix this, wouldn't that be great? But a lot of times when you go to visit somebody, they may not remember you. And, it may feel very threatening to them if you suddenly say, do you know who I am? Who am I? Or you get out the photo album and say, who's this? Who's this? Who's this? I probably am not going to be able to identify that. And that's probably going to make me feel frustrated. And I might start to shut down or withdraw. So instead, you might kind of give them an out. You kind of just walk in and you might say, hi, Grandma, it's Deb, your favorite granddaughter. So now I've told her who I am. And she may or may not remember me or identify me that way, but I've already bypassed, trying to have her tell me who I am. So I've kind of already helped with that. So the 5 key messages, and this is kind of the goal of Dementia Friends of Pennsylvania. The 5 key messages that we want people to remember is dementia is not a normal part of aging. Not everyone who grows old will develop dementia. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. The most common is Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is not just about having memory problems. It can affect thinking, communication, my ability to navigate through everyday tasks. It is very, 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 very possible for me to have a good quality of life living with dementia. Don't bet against me. There's more to the person than the dementia. People living with dementia are a valuable part of the community. We won't read through all of these because I know you have a lunch waiting, but some brain healthy habits. These are very important. Getting plenty of sleep, which I'm sure you all do. I'm sure you do that. Nutrition, eating well. That's very important. Following a healthy Mediterranean diet. So the DASH diet, which was initially developed for heart disease, we're also finding is now also considered the MIND diet, which is very helpful. And that stands for Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So eating those healthy fruits and vegetables, cutting back on sweets, cutting back on excess fats and I know, I'm sorry, that's terrible news. Emotional well-being, talking about feelings, being supported, being connected in your community. Social isolation is terrible. for people living with dementia. We want to connect and keep them involved in the community. It's good for all of us. I think we saw that during COVID for sure. Physical exercise, super important. It's great for your brain. You should shoot for about 120 minutes of exercise a day that gets your heart pumping. And cognitive fitness, so doing things that, engage your mind, whether it's, Sudoku or, writing. There's been this big study on the nuns of Notre Dame. Nuns that they studied for many, 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 many years, well over 60 years, they studied this group of nuns, and they found that even though the biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's is advanced age, the longer I live, the higher my chances are that I will develop Alzheimer's disease. There were nuns that journaled all the time, and they found that the nuns who expressed themselves through writing using, just prolific writing that they did, it helped delay the onset of dementia in many of those individuals. So super important to engage your mind. Now, by the power vested in me by the state of Pennsylvania, you are all now officially Dementia Friends in Pennsylvania. You will be counted tomorrow. If you want to look on the Dementia Friends website, you will notice that that number has increased by the amount of folks that are in here. So I have certificates for all of you. We would like to see as Dementia Friends Pennsylvania, we hope that you put something that you learned today in action. Whether it is, talking about dementia with somebody, supporting somebody that's living with dementia, finding a way to connect with somebody. We hope that you take that action to do that. So there's a lot of ways that you can do that, but I'm gonna give you all a certificate, and then I'm gonna take a picture of you, unless you object.
Hey, Deb,
Yeah,
you mentioned the DASH diet, but there's been a lot of studies coming out now about a healthy input of minerals supplements like magnesium and zinc, B12, D3 will also help stabilize the onset of.
yep, vitamin B, vitamin D, magnesium. Yep, there's definitely, there's always something.
Zinc's a big one.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, we always want to be careful of any supplements you take, especially if you're taking other medications, because they can always interfere with something. That I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of benefits to that. You're welcome.
Deb, I do have a question from folks who tuned in online. We've got.
Oh, I didn't know I was online.
Yes, could I have 4 certificates for those?
Yes, I will have to email it to you if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yes, absolutely. We can send those certificates out. I'll send you one when I get back.
Who's gonna make copies of
I'll
it?
email it to you.
Let's make a copy of it.
You just make copies?
No, but I can email.
Well, because then I can email it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So if it's all right with you, I'll take a picture of you all.
Yeah.
If anybody else has any questions?
Thank you.
then I can answer. Yeah.
I've heard that they're now saying, I guess, Alzheimer's is, diabetes type.
Yes.
You say
Yeah.
anything about that?
They're really
Diabetes type 4.
determining that sugar, added sugar in our diet is terrible for us. And there is a big connection now between diabetes. So it is very common for people who are living with dementia, especially a vascular type of dementia. We see a history of diabetes for that individual. We might see things like high cholesterol, high blood pressure. But yes, sugar is really something that we should avoid if we can, What's that? Oh, I'd say added sugars, yeah, if you can eliminate added sugars, but like you're gonna eat an apple and that has natural sugar in it, I think that's, that's a good thing. But yes, anything with added sugar. So I'm sorry about that cannoli dip I brought, now that I'm thinking about it, but you don't have to eat it, that's the good thing. You can say no. But yes, yeah, eliminating sugar, excessive alcohol, not great for us. Alcohol is a neurotoxin, which translates to brain poison. So, yeah, it's not good news. So usually, sometimes there's alcohol-induced dementia called Wernicke-Korsakoff, which generally we see begin to affect people in their late fifties, early sixties. So, you want to avoid, abusing that. But yeah, good questions. All right.
Also,
Yeah.
just, if you know anybody with a brain injury, they're more susceptible to.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, so CTE, which is chronic, traumatic encephalopathy, also known as football dementia. So if seen any of the Aaron Hernandez documentaries, not saying that the things that he did in his life were solely because of CTE, but many types of dementias can't be definitively diagnosed until post-mortem. So after somebody passes away, we look at the brain, some of those being Lewy body dementia. We can't definitively say it's Lewy body till we look at the brain. Same thing with CTE. They look at the brain post-mortem. They did examine his brain, Aaron Hernandez, after he passed away, and they did identify that he had CTE. It can definitely lead to more, again, poor decision-making, aggressive behaviors. But even a single traumatic brain injury can lead to, dementia later in life. We had a gentleman in our community who was a passenger in a vehicle and he was thrown from the vehicle, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he sustained a traumatic brain injury in his 20s and was able to live on his own with support of his family up until about his early 50s. And then he did develop, we call it developing dementia secondary to a TBI. So that does happen. We see a lot of veterans that come back, that might have, been in an accident where, their vehicle encountered an explosive device. So I've met a lot of veterans that have had, are now recognizing that they have cognitive changes based on that brain injury.
One of the things that you can do, is get your blood work done to see if you're genetically predisposed to, have dementia. But that being said, I've worked with health practitioners, and even if you're genetically predisposed towards, developing, Alzheimer's or dementia, it doesn't mean that is a sentence for you. Like anything that happens doesn't mean that it's a sentence that you're going to get like a traumatic brain injury or something like that. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's like a soup of a mix of things that can contribute to you actually getting it, and you can work against that with the alcohol, the sugars, the healthy diet, the healthy fats, the good supplements, things like that. You can really support your body from a health standpoint so that you don't realize it, earlier than you maybe were going to, or if at all. It's kind of up in the air as to whether or not anyone will get it, but.
That's a great point. And that's often a question I get asked when I'm meeting with families. They're worried about themselves. They say, is this going to happen to me? And just like Taylor said, it's not a guarantee. Even if you do have the gene that predisposes you to it, you can make an impact in your own life by, choosing a healthy lifestyle. Definitely there are dementias that have a familial connection, like Huntington's disease dementia, but it does not mean that you will definitely develop dementia. So you can definitely take the steps to, do what you can to prevent that. So I don't know if you all want to squeeze together. Maybe I'll just do it from over here in the corner. That might work.
We get close up. Let's get to the center.
I apologize for running out of certificates, but I will definitely email certificates and anybody who was missing one.
I can give mine to someone.
There, all in the same boat. We got it. Okay, come on. Ready? Wait, you gotta get your.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, she needs it. All right. 1, 2, Dementia Friends. Perfect. Anybody not get one?
Hopefully you want to eat this, but I got.
I love that.
Yeah.
I got to do it when I think about it. Or else-
It was very severe, very severe. But you know what? She's so much. They vow to keep her. Yeah. And they took shifts. the five that are there and their spouses. So. Yeah, it's amazing. It is. It's so yeah, that's why.
Yeah, I figured.
I'm gonna speak behind you and I'm gonna. Thank you. Because I hit stop and then re-record, so they're separated.
Yeah. It's so, we're so excited. We drive.